the natural vegetation of the Alice Springs area is actually woodland, and woodland basically means that you've got a majority of plants that have quite a woody structure. So when you touch them, you recognise yourself that they are woody, hence the name. But they're also got heaps of grass species that grow underneath, and a lot of softer vegetation as well. Dominated largely by acacias in this case, witchetty bush, ironwoods, mulga, you know, mulga and witchetty, those famous names that people often hear but very rarely ever see. And also punctuating these places are the corky barks of the hakeas. These places also had some very large trees in them, some of the corymbia. Now, corymbias, most people look at them and say, yep, I recognise that, that's a eucalypt. And in fact, yeah, corymbia is a name that's come out of eucalyptus. Um, Quite often those corymbias have quite twisted and gnarly looking shapes that fascinate the average visitor to the park. In this case, the woodlands around Alice Springs gain a little extra water because they've got the McDonnell Range nearby. So even though the average rainfall in Alice Springs is only about 187 millimetres a year, because a lot of that rain falls on the range and then flows off the range, you actually get a magnified effect at the foot of the range. So low rainfall, but you actually get more water flowing off. So things can actually look pretty green. And they stay green throughout most of the time. However, if it rains, magically before your eyes, it's as if someone got the colour palette out and brightened up all the colours. All the greens in the vegetation take on a new vibrancy. And in only a short time, only in a matter of days, you'll see new species of grass coming up through the spaces, and in a week or two you'll notice that all the trees have sprouted into life. And it doesn't really matter what time of the year that happens, the trees will respond. Sometimes in winter the acacias will respond by flowering, and in fact you get flowering on a lot of the trees whenever it rains. They're just sitting there ready to fire as soon as the right conditions come along. And of course when it does rain, they're the ideal conditions to get the new little trees growing underneath as well. So they would require a few wet years in a row in order to get started. And given that we only get those very rarely, it just goes to show what an amazing landscape it is and what phenomenal adaptations all these elements, these vegetative pieces have in order to survive in this place. I've often heard people say that this is a harsh landscape. Well, it's not harsh for a witchetty bush because this is where they belong, but it would be harsh if you got something from the coast and tried to plant it here. All these plants are adapted for this environment. This is their place. Witchetty bushes, they're the classic one that Aboriginal people often catch witchetty grubs inside the roots of. So the witchetty will live inside quite thick roots, maybe 3 to 4 centimetres across sometimes, and eat the lovely fleshy piece out of the middle. And the tree will just keep feeding the little grub that sits in there because a lot of the nutrients and things that the plant are storing are held in those roots.